many because she could sew. So let's start with the reading, then we'll get into the rest of the lesson. Hal?
The reading this morning will be from Acts chapter 9, verses 36 through 43. Now in Joppa there was a disciple named Tabitha, which being translated means Dorcas. This woman was excelling in acts of kindness and charity, which she did habitually. But it happened at that time she became sick and died. And when they washed her body, they laid it in an upstairs room. Since Lydia was near Joppa, the disciples, having heard that Peter was there, sent 2 men to him, urging him, "Do not delay in coming to us." So Peter got ready and went with them. And when he arrived, they brought him into the room upstairs, and all the widows stood beside him, weeping and showing all the tunics and garments that Dorcas had made for them while she was with them. But Peter sent them all out, and knelt down and prayed, and turning to the body, said, "Tabitha, arise." And she opened her eyes, and when she saw Peter, she sat up. And he gave her his hand and raised her up, and calling the saints and widows, he presented her alive. And it became known all over Joppa, and many believed in the Lord. And Peter stayed in Joppa many days with a tanner named Simon.
Now, there are a number of admirable women listed in the Bible. I mean, we have, she's one of several. Let me back up here. It's clear that Luke considered each of these women to be very important as he wrote about them. 2 of them, like Dorcas, were successful business women who also worked tirelessly to bless others. So first we have Priscilla. Now, she had a husband named Aquila. They lived in the city of Corinth. They made tents because tents were still extremely important in the lives, especially of the Jews as they would travel back to Jerusalem, but others, the nomadic tribes in the area. But her greater gift was her ability to teach the gospel. And as part of Paul's missionary team, she was a great missionary. And Lydia, who ran a very lucrative dye business. We know she was wealthy. We know she did well because she worked in purples, which sometime if you're interested, look up how they made purple dye in biblical times. It's incredible. But anyway, she was in Philippi, and she was wealthy, used a good deal of her resources to support Paul financially, his ongoing missions. And she, in fact, in Acts 16, became the first convert to Christianity in Europe. So, very important. So women have a massive role in spreading the gospel. Never think because we have me standing up here, a man standing up here preaching, you've got way more hours in the day to share the gospel than I do from here. Way more. And it doesn't have to be with eloquence of speech. It doesn't have to be with a wide audience. You know, you don't have to be a TV evangelist, which I don't like most of those. But you don't have to be that. You just have to be kind and loving and sharing and giving and let your friends know why you are those attributes. So all the widows stand around. I mean, when we want to learn who a person is, you look at the people around them. Is there anything worse than you go to a funeral and no one's there? I mean, it's so embarrassing for the family. Or you go there and no one really has anything good to say about the person. Dorcas, it seemed like the majority of the town turns out to tell about Dorcas and how much they loved her and how important she was. In Acts 9:36, talks about by making clothing for them, and she was always doing good, it says, and helping the poor. Always doing good. If someone looks at you, do they say, she is always doing good for someone else? That's important. I'll embarrass somebody, but Dawn Farmer did something very nice to me a while back. She sent me a jar of raspberry jelly. Now, see, that's unexpected. And it's homemade. And it's really nice. And, Yeah, it tastes okay for a first try. No, it tasted wonderful. I ate the whole jar over a few weeks' time. But that meant a lot. Those little things mean a lot to people. Her story also reveals some characteristics that she displayed, and they should be yours: industriousness, or hard worker, compassion for others, charity, the willingness to give to someone. And charity is not necessarily money. It's give something, anything, even time and prayers. Selflessness and grace. As I think about some of the older Christian women who's influenced me, I look and I think about, almost always, it was this characteristic of being graceful. I'm not talking about not tripping on things. I'm talking about that loving, kind, gentle spirit. I'm thinking of all the women who, as I first started preaching and teaching adult classes and stuff, that would tell me I did good. I'm thinking of the German, I was looking at my wife, thinking of the German woman who said, my first attempt to lead a whole communion service in German without any having looked it up, told me God understood and gave me a hug. It was terrible. But she loved me anyway. And eventually I could preach in German without even having to think about it, just did it. So, without her encouragement, had she said, oh, Jeff, don't ever try that again. We'll just skip church today if there's nobody that can translate, I'd have never done it again. And by the way, when our young people get up like Amos did on Wednesday night, do you make a beeline to them and hug them and tell them how great they did? I don't care if they're 3 or if they're 18. Let our young people know when they do good things how important they are to us. And even if it's terrible, how great they did. God will allow you to lie on that one a little bit, I think. Blame me if you get to heaven and he fusses about it. But, encouraging them, showing them how much you love them is so important. Paul must have had her in mind when he wrote the verse in Colossians 3:23. Whatever you do, do it with all of your heart, as working for the Lord and not for your human masters. You can influence many people by just working hard in your regular everyday job. Because they will say, you never get angry. Even though you get frustrated, you never curse. You never yell at people. What makes you different? And that's huge in your own personal ministry. So Acts 9:37, about that time she gets sick and dies. It's unclear what illness she had, but it seems to have happened very quickly, not unusual. They clean her up, they lay her out for the time of grieving or sitting Shabbat, but it says they sent for Peter because they heard he was nearby. Now this shows the faith of the Christians in that town, because they believe that Peter can do something for this dead woman. I don't think they sent for him to come and attend a funeral service. They expected something to happen. So, another side point, when someone asks you a question, they're expecting you to know something, to say something, to do something, because you're a Christian. So, it says Peter sends them all out of the room, and he looks at her and says, get up. How powerful is that? That his words spoke to a dead spirit and made her rise up. It's amazing. And it says he took her by the hand and helped her get up. So now this marvelous gift serves a couple of purposes in that very moment. One, he is displaying the glory of God. He is showing how powerful God is to these people in this town. And to the widows, he brings them out, presents her alive. It says it became known all over Joppa, and many people believed in the Lord. So the very first thing, when you do something great, it may not be raising the dead. In fact, I'll be surprised if it is. But when you do something great for God, whatever it is, it will affect other people and help them to believe in the Lord. Secondly, it displays the passion God has. When the disciples heard he was in the city of Lydda, they sent 2 men to get him and urged him, please come at once. God's people are compassionate to the needs, the fears, the hurts, the pain of others. Allison's going tomorrow to a funeral back in Kirksville, Missouri. And we've jokingly, when people ask about this cousin we talk about, call her a pseudo-cousin because she's really not a relative in that way. But she's going. Why? Because this is a person that has shown compassion for our family, and Allison wants to show compassion back. That's what God's people do. And do you not think that this person who is not a relative of hers, that the family will not recognize, notice when she comes all those hours for a funeral to turn around and come home again? They do. People notice when you go out of your way to do something good for someone else. So let's look at some of the other gifts that she gives us, because Dorcas has given you some gifts today. One, that no gift is insignificant. You think the first time she sewed up, maybe she just did a repair for somebody in town who said, I really can't afford it, but could you sew this for me? I'm no good at it. And she did it. And the word went around. And if you're not sure that word spreads when you do something good, let us as a church, let me and Alice and Julie, whichever one of us prepare a big thing of food for somebody who's in need, and that next about 2 weeks, we get overwhelmed with requests for help. Why? Because somebody went out and said, that church will help you. Now, I keep in contact with all the other churches in town. We have some email networks that we do, and the majority of them are saying, we can't help anybody right now. We don't have the funds. We don't have the food available. We're not helping. And so I feel terrible when I have to say no, because occasionally we have to say no. But I do like the fact that because of your generosity and your blessing, we can almost always give people food. Almost always. And we don't just give them enough for a day or two. We overwhelm them with food. I'm going to announce today Schultz Lewis is coming again in a few weeks. I'll tell you more about it, but we've always overwhelmed them with what we do for them. I mean, to the point of tears occasionally when they would come. So, 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 28 through 30 says, God chose the insignificant and the despised, the hated things of this world. Yes, even the things that don't exist in this world, to abolish the power of the things that do exist, so that no creature can boast in God's presence. Who and what you are now is a gift from God in Messiah Jesus, who has become for us the wisdom of God, and righteousness, and sanctification, and redemption as well. That's the gift of God, and no gift of God is insignificant. Secondly, use the talents you've been given. Each of us have talents. Let me say that again. Each of us have been given talents that can be used for good. Don't make me start calling your names and naming them. And if you say, I don't have a talent, then you need to get on your knees when you get home and pray to God to show me my talent. You have been granted through the gift of God talents that you can use for others. Whatever that is. It can be cooking or baking for a neighbor who's laid up or sick. So many years ago, we had some, as a church, of course, in Georgia, we would, when somebody was sick or died, surgery, whatever, we would take food to their house. And because we're all Christians and like family, we don't leave your door locked when you know it's happening. You'd be gone and the door would be open. And so one of our friends took a casserole over for a church thing, and he left it on the counter. And then he thought, I don't think this is their house. I'm pretty sure this isn't their house. And then he heard the shower running. And he said he was so torn by whether do I take the casserole and run? Do I leave it and run? I don't remember the outcome. I think he took it and ran. But Allison says yes. But that idea of sharing a meal, cooking, organizing a friend's garage, helping someone in our church that maybe don't even need the help, but showing up and weeding and painting something for them, whatever their need is. Now, anybody can do this. I don't care if you're 6 years old, you can do this. Write a note or a card to someone who's sick or in pain of any sort. Look, little ones, all of our little ones, you can write a little note, or if you would draw a little picture and color it and give it to one of the elderly, they would love you forever. Doing those kind things, sending cards and letters to Nancy, who's stuck at home now most of the time. These things are important. So be an encourager. Third, stay faithful. Stay faithful in doing good works for others. And it doesn't say beyond the sowing what Dorcas did for others, but she definitely made caring a habit. Caring for others. Over time, she was so well known and so respected. It's easy to start measuring what we do in terms not of wealth, not of rewards, but in the respect people have for you by asking you questions. That's your measurement. But if we consistently reach out, if we consistently have a heart for ministry, God will increase the influence of what you're doing. It is not mine to cause an increase. It is mine to sow seeds. And God will take care of the rest of it. 2 Thessalonians 3:10, as for you, brothers and sisters, never get tired of doing good things. Note the word there. Never get tired of doing good things. Never. Keep going. 4, build some relationships that will have a lasting impact on others. The goal is always to bring people to Christ in everything we say or do. But you don't have to, you're not going to bring everyone you know to Christ. But you can still build relationships that will have a lasting impact on others. My parents were involved in the church bus ministry because I think one of the bus companies convinced every church in the South to buy a Joy bus. They sold 1 million old school buses and painted them white, had a bluebird on the side. Y'all remember the bluebird buses? And said Joy Bus. And we would every Sunday morning go. And I know there was a couple houses that my mother would go into them, into the house, because the parents didn't even want to get out of bed. And she would dress these children and bring them out to the bus because the parents said, well, if you come in and get them, you can have them. And so she would. And one of those young boys, who I remember a couple years younger than me, is a gospel preacher in my hometown now. And been preaching there for many years. All because Mom would go in that house. In fact, we're going to do a series on Jonah starting next week. 5 lessons that I'm giving credit to him. He wrote those lessons, and I got a copy of them, and we're going to do those lessons. All because somebody walked in his house and put some pants and socks on a little boy and loaded him on the Joy Bus. So she left a legacy in the things she did. If being good to others is not your priority, change your priority. Today, make a change. Because you need to care about the things God cares about. Those are important. You need to seek to show agape love to the people around you. You need to look for ways to connect to other people. And make service and ministry toward others the priority of your life. Going to work and earning a living is not your priority. And if it is, you've misplaced your priorities. Caring for others. Again, some of your Bibles call her a disciple. That just means she was a servant of God. She was enthusiastic about doing good for others. She knew what she had and what she could do for people in need, to care for them, to provide for them. You don't have to wait till you're rich. If churches were built on the promises of someday when I'm rich and have the extra money, I'll build a church, we'd all be sitting out in the parking lot with no building. This church, this congregation, rather, way long ago, like when LaKenda and Allison were little girls, way long ago, prehistory almost. Now, this church, I know for a fact, would go around and ask people to give up their egg money to pay the bills so we could have the lights on so the church could meet on Sundays. Don't wait till you're rich to do good things. Just do them now. It's a priority in our lives. She knew that she was called to help people in need. So don't wait. Start doing it now. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10. You are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good things, good works, which God has prepared for you to do in advance. Wait a minute. Do these good things which God prepared in advance for you to do. So wait a minute. That coworker that comes to you and asks for advice, God put them there? Sounds like it. The neighbor that comes to you and says, can you help me with this? God put them there? Sounds like it. My son yelled at us a while back because he said we were too old to be doing this. But we stopped and helped a young girl whose car broke down on the side of the road at night. He said, do you know how dangerous that is? That's the cop speaking. But I wasn't going to let this teenage girl out in the country walk back to town by herself. I don't care if it was dangerous. Did God put her in our path? Maybe her car would have broken down anyway. But maybe the wrong person would have picked her up. Or maybe no one would have picked her up. Instead, God put us in the path to help this girl. And 6, let God use you to be a witness of Christ's love and care and concern and compassion to other people. Dorcas showed so many people the love of God. By her death, she even pointed a massive ministry and miracle to show who God was and the power that he had. There was great rejoicing, but not because she was alive to sew 2 more garments, because God had raised the dead, and they saw that in her town. And see, God knows what he's doing when he does things, obviously, but he did it in a seaport. How did the word of this spread around the world in that day and time? Because there was no TV and there's no YouTube. And so what do? You sit around and you gossip. And the sailor said, you won't believe what happened on the other side of the Aegean Sea. Over in that town called Joppa, they raised somebody from the dead. Everyone saw it. It happened. It happened. And the word of the power of God spread. You have a chance to lead other people to Christ because of the power who is God. All through your day, you have that opportunity, so don't pass up on it. So, like Dorcas, be an example of agape love in our community. Agape is pure, willful, sacrificial love. That's what it means. And if you read, many people say it is the most powerful of all of the types of love. Be alert for practical needs around you. Things that you can help. Be aware of a prayer need and faithfully lift that up to God. Don't say, I'll pray for you. Pray for them. Be ready to share what God has done in your life, your personal story, to other people. And yes, that includes the bad. Tell them the bad and how God changed you to make it good. Because that's important for people to know. Too many people don't like Christianity because they think we're all perfect goody two-shoes. The reality is we were as bad as they were, but God made us better. God has always gifted women to bring a positive change to their community. So ladies, this sermon is especially about you. You have the ability, you have the influence, you have the power to change lives around you every day. She's a wonderful example to all of us, but especially to the ladies for the legacy that is the women of God. You are a powerful force for Christ. So take advantage of it. So stand firm. Don't let anything move you. Give yourself fully to the work of God, because